Hi, my name is Alessandro Cangelosi, and that's a new tip tutorial coming from cgcookie.com for Max Cookie. This time we'll see how to use some new feature coming in 3ds Max 2011, the new release, and we'll see how to export some passes from 3ds Max and then how to compose it inside Composite. Composite is a part of the new 3ds Max release, and it's a compositing tool that was named Toxic in the previous release, and now is internal in 3ds Max, so we can use it to compose our scene. So I'm using a really simple scene. You see, I have a car, and actually I'm using a really simple shader, but we can go inside the material editor and we can see that now we have the compact material editor and the slate material editor. So let's open slate, and slate is really big. It's a node-based shader, and we can pick the shader from the car, and you see we have this shader, and the shader is really simple, and there we have all the information for the shader, and actually we can create some just a color variation, and that's all. Now I'd like to create a shader for the ground, so let's go inside the advanced material, but before we have to change the rendering engine. So let's move to mental ray. Okay, and you see that now we have new shader. So let's move this one and let's create, using the drag and drop feature, an arcane design, and we can call it, let's double click to have it there, and let's call it ground. And you see that we have all the possibility to link every single parameter, and we'll see how to use slate in a future tutorial. For the moment we can use a template, so let's use glossy plastic. Okay, and let's select the ground. Let's change the basic color, so let's use, for example, a gray, and right mouse click over the shader, and let's select assign material to selection. Okay, let's close slate, and now we have our scene. Now I'd like to use just a skylight. Okay, and then let's put a light there, and let's set to off. So let's go there inside the rendering parameters, and let's try to make a render test, and you see that's our rendering for the moment. So let's render it using a 16 and 1, and let's render again, and you see it's a really simple render, and the quality is not so high. Now I save the frame inside the right folder. Okay, tip, let's wait for the new folder. Tip 2, okay, and let's call it beauty.tiff. Let's use 16-bit alpha channel and pack bits. Okay, and now I'd like to use the let's remove the final gather, and let's enable the material override, and now we can create let's open slate, and we can create a new shader. So let's create a standard shader, and we can call it ambient occlusion. And now I need a map, so let's go inside and let's search for the advanced maps. Okay, let's select the ambient occlusion, let's drag it there. Now we have to connect this node to the diffuse, dragging it in the diffuse color. And now you see that I have the map inside the diffuse. Let's set to 0 the max distance, just because I am not checking the scale for our scene. And now we can select everything. Okay, let's select this shader, right mouse button and assign material to selection, and we can also disable the material override. Let's make a test render, and you see that we have the ambient occlusion path, but before we have to change something inside the shader. So let's select this one and let's make self-illumination to 100, and again let's make a render. Okay, now we have just to pick the environment, and let's set to white the background color, and let's render again. Okay, you see we have a really simple and fast ambient occlusion path just to make a test. Okay, let's save it and let's call it ao.jpg. Okay, now we can call composite, and let's see how to use all this layer inside the new Autodesk composite software. Let's wait for the loading. Okay, let's move it there, and let's move it there. Okay, so it needs a lot of space, so let's try to use it inside our resolution. Okay, let's start using the middle mouse button, and you see that we have this fast access UE, and we can go inside tools. Okay, and then we have all the tools we can use inside composite. Let's use image import, and you see that inside tool we have all the tool that we can find inside this section. Let's select image import and let's drag it there. Now it is asking to create the composition, so let's select a name and let's leave composition. Okay, now we have our composition, and basically we have two nodes. We have the image imports and we have the output. The output will be useful to see the composition inside the player and to render our scene. So basically that's our composition. Let's select the import image import, and let's click over the browser, and we can go inside our folder to select the first layer. So let's go inside tip 2, and you see that we have beauty. Okay, and you see that actually we have our beauty path. Let's use the right mouse button over the player and view RGB, so we have just no alpha viewport visualization. Okay, that's our output. We need to comp over the image our ambient occlusion path. So middle mouse button, tools, and we have to go inside again image import. Let's drag it there, and we have to load the ambient occlusion path. So let's go in the right folder, AO. Okay, so you see we have it. If we like to see not just the final comp, but every single node we are selecting, we can use the right mouse button, display, tools output. So now I can select output and I see the output. If I select beauty, I see the beauty. If I select ambient occlusion, I see the ambient occlusion inside the player. So middle mouse button, tools, and composite, blend and comp, drag it there, and you see that we have different input node. We have masking, matte, back, and front. So we can select the output from the beauty and connect it to the back, and then we can move it there. Sorry, and using space bar to move the nodes. Then let's connect the output from the ambient occlusion path to the front, and then we have to connect the output from blend and comp to the output. So basically, you see that we see just the ambient occlusion, so we have to select the blend and comp, and you see that inside the method we have the blend and actually set to normal. If we set it to multiply, you see that we have the ambient occlusion path over our image, and we can set also the linear alpha to have no alpha paths over the ambient occlusion, and you see that we have the ambient occlusion comped over our beauty path, and selecting the blend and comp, we can decide how much opacity we'd like to have for the ambient occlusion. For example, we can set it to 0.6 to have less visibility. And last thing we can see is let's move using the space bar the nodes, and let's see to remove the grain just using a blur effect. So let's go inside the filtering, let's select blur, and you can drag it over the connection, so automatically it will be connected to the in between the two nodes. Let's select blur, so let's make it like that, and you see that we are changing the radius, and we see the result in real time. Then let's select the output, and you see that our final image now has no grain inside the ambient occlusion path. So we saw how to create, let's use the, before we can finish, let's use the control key with the space bar to zoom, and then just the space bar to move, and then again. Okay, you see we saw how to use Composite to create a really simple composition for 3ds Max, and we saw how to prepare a really simple ambient occlusion path. So it was just to introduce you to Composite, a new feature for 3ds Max 2011, and we'll talk about it more and more in next tutorials. So for the moment that's all, and I hope to see you again on Max Cookie to check for new tip tutorial from cgcookie.com. Bye.